Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. It's time for Comics Revisited. Today we're talking about Sandman, Preludes and Nocturnes. That's right, everybody. Thanks for joining us here at Comics Revisited on Pop Culture Philosophers. I am Rockin, Robbie Billups. This is
Brooks
the Magnificent. We are going to be talking about Sandman, Preludes and Nocturnes today. That's right, Brooks. We're starting our journey through Neil Gaiman's Sandman. Of course, this book was written by Neil Gaiman. It originally came out in 1988. The editor, Karen Berger, I found out it is Berger, in fact, actually, had wanted Neil to do something at DC for a while. This is right before Vertigo started. This is one of the books, though, that eventually helped launch Vertigo and, of course, became the flagship of Vertigo. The Sandman is a new character that was created by Neil Gaiman for the DC Universe that is basically the personification of dream. Right? He's part of the Endless, and him and his 6 siblings represent these different facets of humanity, but they're not quite gods. So they are archetypes, but they're not the archetypes of the gods, though they kind of do overlap with some classical mythology.
They're anthropomorphic personifications.
Thank you so much, Professor Brooks. Speaking of Professor Brooks, overall, what do you think about the Sandman? Neil Gaiman, what do you think?
I love the Sandman. I mean, it's one of... Like, I've always been, a very fantasy kind of guy. I love fantasy stories.
No
and
doubt.
The Sandman has a lot of that. It has a lot of the mythology and world building, kind of stuff that nerds like me are into.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It's like you can tell it's by somebody who's really into fantasy and into mythology and who knows his stuff.
Oh, absolutely. So Karen Berger, a great editor over at DC who is responsible for bringing in over some of that British talent, the Pete Milligans, the Grant Morrisons, the Warren Ellises even, maybe. I don't know if she's responsible for Ellis. Anyway, but that just this enormous wave of talent that came into DC in the 80s, and Neil Gaiman had done Black Orchid with Dave McKean, and then he decided to come up with Sandman because he had already pitched an idea for Sandman to DC that was based on the Jack Kirby version of the character.
Wesley Dodds?
No, the Jack Kirby version, which is the second one.
Yeah, that's right.
That hardly anybody remembers, right? But him and Joe Simon did that book, Sandman, right? That was him and Joe Simon, right? He wore blue and yellow?
Yeah, it was a blue,
something
yellow,
like that.
With like an hourglass.
You barely see him. That would have been a really cool, like, what if? We talk about what ifs, right?
Hour Man.
What ifs? What if Neil Gaiman did that version of the Sandman? That would have been way different, crazier, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so Karen Berger said, let's go ahead and do Sandman, but I want you to create something new. And I'm glad that she said that, because what we got was an amazing character, an amazing story, and it starts here in Preludes and Nocturnes, which is available in trade paperback. This recently released nifty remastered 30th anniversary edition. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous. We'll throw links down below. Of course, we got the absolute version over there. Brooks, grab that massive beast, if you will. Show it off. Yeah. See, I have the first volume of
Kill
this.
Somebody that.
Yeah, I had the first volume of this, Brooks, because my girlfriend got it for me, and it was an amazing gift. But it's very difficult to read. I do not like the experience of reading this book. Like, it's actually... I don't even know if it's going to come out.
You're supposed to read it like Destiny on a pedestal.
Yeah, you do. Pull that out. It is like Destiny's reading. Yeah,
stuck in
yeah,
there.
because it hasn't been pulled out in years. Oh my goodness. Are you serious?
Yeah. Dang, dude.
Oh my goodness. All right. So maybe we're not going to get that out, but it's really a massive project to undertake. Well, it's leather bound. It's like a Bible jammed into something. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's stuck in there.
So we're going to have to get that out. Wow. Anyway, I'm glad that happened here on the YouTube channel. I'm handling it just fine, but I'm sure it'll be fine, right?
Yeah, it'll be.
Now it's like, it's bothering me so much.
The moisture, from all the heat and stuff.
Yeah, it just can't get it up. Oh, I think,
Yeah, you probably just need to pop it up.
Yep,
yeah,
there it is. Did it. You just had to break that air seal. Well, it's still in great condition, actually. It looks beautiful, right?
Yeah.
You open it up and you're like, wow, that's beautiful. Like the pages, how big they are.
Yeah.
Try to read that. Like, it's like this heavy as
so
hell.
Heavy. Like
it's so heavy.
Yeah.
Anyway, you can go that route if you want to. There's also an annotated version, whatever. We'll throw links down below to all available versions of the Sandman. I mean, it's beautiful. It's cool. But I do have a little bit of
a
little bit of damage right there. That happened. Yeah, right there.
Does it have the first 4 or 5 trades?
This has the first 2 trades in it,
so
I think. No, the first 3. It's the first 3 because there's 4 of these that make up all of 75 issues.
What, Dream Country? One of
the
short story.
The third one is Dream Country. Yeah. There's like 4. Anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. We're talking about Preludes and Nocturnes. So the book starts off, and it ran for 75 issues, and it led to Vertigo. It starts off very much a horror comic, and then it goes very much into being a fantasy comic book, right? The basic story is that there's this dude. His name is Morpheus. He's the personification of Dream. He's got siblings. We don't really know who they are at this moment. We don't really know who Dream is in the very beginning. He gets kidnapped, basically trapped in 1916 by Roderick Burgess. It's like a dark magician, Crowley wannabe type, right? It takes him like 70-something years till he finally escapes, and that's just so fun how he like patiently waits for the dude to die, then his son to rise to power, and then a mistake to happen. Then he does free himself from that. He takes care of that. He goes and he meets the 3 fates, the 3 witches. They tell him, you got to go get your 3 relics back. These are 3 artifacts that he has.
Well, he knows he has to get them back.
He knows. He asked them where they are.
He needs to know where they are. Yeah.
Yes, where they are. I'm sorry. Thank you, Professor Brooks. Anyway, so they basically tell him that, your pouch is with John Constantine now, and the helm is now in hell, and the Dreamstone is now in possession of the Justice League, into Dr. Destiny, and it kind of gets a little awkward here because it does start tying into the DC universe a little bit for like the first and only time, really. It's because early on they felt like they needed to make it tie into the DC universe. Yeah. And then they realized they didn't need to do that. And this is also a very horror-driven story. But the Sandman is not a horror comic book, right? It definitely leads into more fantasy and not so much dark fantasy. There's dark fantasy there, but it's not horror. It's not like horrific type stuff that happens. He deals and gets the Dreamstone back from Dr. Destiny. Then he has like a little sad fit there for a minute, and he's shaken out of it when we meet his first sibling in the Endless Death, his older sister. That's basically the story, Brooks. What do you think about it? What stands out for you from the beginning through the end? What do you think?
Well, I think it's a good start. It's a good way to introduce this character, considering how like powerful he's supposed to be. They make him vulnerable. Like he has to
right off the bat.
Yeah, he has to get by like a mere mortal, kind of like Thor in a way, sort of. But a little different. Yeah, because he doesn't have Thor's sense of humor.
The personification of an idea or a god brought down in humility to the human level.
Yeah.
And being trapped and confined in a way. Of course, albeit with Morpheus in a much more literal way, being confined, Yeah. I love that story. I love that he waits. Because typically in these stories...
That's all he has to do.
Typically in the stories you have, there's some action they're going to take. Yeah. This is the inciting incident, and the action develops from there. Morpheus's action is inaction. He just waits because he can do this. Now, at the same time, we find out later on when he has that conversation with Dream, when she reminds him about his responsibilities, the fact that he didn't act, the fact that he just waited, and maybe he couldn't do anything, right? But maybe he could have, but maybe they show in that story that he is neglecting his responsibilities as the being of Dream. He's not just like the person in charge of Dream or the person imbued with the powers of Dream. He is literally Dream. So when he gets captured, terrible things happen. The sickness, the sleeping sickness, which was a real thing, which happened in England, and that's why Neil Gaiman tied it to 1916, 1918 or something like that. I didn't know that till this video. That was a really cool little tidbit. Gaiman throws in so many literary references, so much mythological references, and so much real-life historical references as well. I absolutely love that story, Brooks. What do you think about the Constantine story, where he has to get the dream dust? Constantine, one of his exes maybe, or one of his old friends, one of his old flames has it, and it's a very sad, somber, tragic story. And like I said, this is horror-driven. Sandman is in the early issues.
Yeah. Well, I think the Constantine story is probably the weakest out of the
really?
three. Yeah.
Okay.
It's I mean, all he does is basically goes with Constantine to his house. The house is like taken over by nightmares. He tells them, "Hey, I'm Dream. I'm back."
Yeah.
And they don't call his bluff, so he gets his jewel back, or gets his sandbag back.
Well, I'll tell you this, though.
It's more of a human story than...
It's a human story that shows, at first, Dream's inhumanity, and then his mercy at the end with Constantine. It also... Can you think of 24 pages of a comic book that lets you know pretty much everything you ever need to know about a character, like that issue with John Constantine? Like, if you never read or knew anything about John Constantine, you read that one issue of Sandman, you get who that character is. You really do, right? But it, once again, part of tying it in, right? And, of course, Constantine was part of the DC Universe being in Swamp Thing. He was launching his own Hellblazer series over at, what would be Vertigo at the time, Jamie Delano. Neil Gaiman apparently wanted to do a John Constantine book.
I think that would have worked well. Because Constantine kind of works well with that kind of, the kind of mystical nature of the Sandman.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And he doesn't really show back up too much. He gets more involved in things like books of magic and stuff like that. He kind of pops in, like... Here and there, whatnot. The issue, though, where he goes to hell... a lot of people do look back on these first, 7 issues of Sandman. They think that 8, the last issue of the trade, is where Neil Gaiman finds his voice. And I would say I would agree with that.
The Sound of Her Wings.
Yeah, Sound of Her Wings, the conversation with him and Death. And I really think I get that. But you got to have these initial world building, horror infused stories, because first of all, Neil Gaiman didn't know what he was doing. This is kind of like a warm up. Yeah. Prelude, and that's why they called it Prelude. I almost picked this one up again. That's why they called it Preludes and Nocturnes, is because he was like, this is just some light night music to get you ready for what the Sandman's going to be. Yeah. And there's lots of hints, lots of teases. And even though a lot of people consider Preludes and Nocturnes to be the weakest of the books, it's still exceptional. Yeah. It's still very well done.
It's the most simple, kind of story, the quest narrative.
Yes, exactly. But it also has one of the most memorable moments in the Sandman for anybody who's into the Sandman. That's the issue, A Hope in Hell, where he gets in the word battle with Chronozon, or whatever his name is, the demon. It's from the Crowley mythos, believe it or not. There's all kinds of stuff pulled from everywhere, and that's something I love about Neil Gaiman. Yeah. But he gets in this word battle, and instead of choosing, Chronozon the demon, whatever its name is, he is choosing these means of destruction, right? Yeah. And Sandman, Morpheus, chooses these means of life, which ultimately leads him to saying hope, which overtakes all, including utter annihilation. Yeah. And then hell still won't let him go, but then he says that beautiful moment, probably one of the most beautiful moments in all of Sandman, all of Neil Gaiman's writings, is when Morpheus, powerless, right, looks at Lucifer and the other lords of hell and says, what power does hell have without the dream of heaven?
It's like Morpheus is never really flustered,
Never. Talk about pride.
There's actually a good moment I remember in this trade was when he gets back to the dreaming, Yeah. And he first starts, he sees the palace, and then there's a picture of his face, and he's like he looks like he's just devastated.
Yeah, because before he goes on this quest, he goes back home, the dreaming his castle, everything's in shambles.
He has to recharge.
Yeah, it's all in shambles. He has to pull the original contracts or whatever he's given to Cain and Abel. We get introduced to Cain and Abel, and little gargoyle dude, and that's just amazing characters that really lead you into the idea that this is a story about story, right? Back to the Dr. Destiny stuff, though, I really like that stuff. The issue 24 Hours, I believe it's called, where they're in the diner. Yeah. He's using that Dreamstone. And he's just inverting the use of it, and he's torturing these people. You know what I'm saying? They're literally screwing and killing each other the entire issue. It's raw, it's visceral, it gets really dark. And it may be the most dark and horrific issue of the Sandman. Yeah, I think it turns some people off when they read the book. But it really does get better, Yeah. But I really love that issue. I love the whole take on it. Sam Keith, Mike Dringenberg, the way that they show Dr. Destiny as this rotted out corpse, potato,
he's emaciated.
Thing. Yeah, it's super scary, right? And of course the final issue with Death, Sound of Her Wings, conversation with Death. Dream's basically all sad because, yeah, I did my quest, I took my thing. And of course, Dr. Destiny, he doesn't even defeat Dr. Destiny, or John Dee, as they call it. Really another cool little reference to some old school. John Dee, of course, came up with the Enochian language. He was like the occult advisor to Queen Elizabeth or something like that. Right?
I've never heard of him.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's right. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. That's who John Dee is, right?
Could be.
Anyway, he's also just an old school Justice League villain that Neil Gaiman really infused a lot of darkness, a lot of tragedy. Yeah. And because even though he's being super evil and terrible, there's this element of tragedy to him.
He's been like locked up in like... He's just basically been locked in the dark for all these years.
Yeah, right?
The only time... And his mother had just come to visit him, and then the guy had told him that his mother had died.
You know, talk about how much the Sandman is a reflection on family, because... First of all, you got Roderick Burgess and his son, so a father and son relationship there. You got Dream and Death, a brother-sister relationship, a sibling relationship. You've got the mother-son relationship with Dr. Destiny and his mother. It's all throughout there. It really is. And I think that's a really interesting thing, especially that issue where he talks to Death. Because he's all sad because he's like, yeah, I did my quest, I got my power back. No, I don't know what to do. And Death's like, we have responsibilities. I'm so pissed off. Like, everybody loves Dream, but they hate me. And you're the bad one. You're the asshole. Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying? And he's like, I agree.
That's a very big sister thing to do, too. Like, just be like, stop being a baby.
It's a really interesting thing, though, saying about what the book actually is. That exploration of the link between Dream and Death. Hypnos and Thanatos, as they would say in the Greek pantheon or whatever. They were twins. They are closely related. What is that? That there's a famous quote. Is like something like death is just like sleep is just little slices of death, or something like that. There is a thing, and I understand death should be more comforting. And they mentioned that in that issue. It should be more comforting, almost in a way, because once it happens, it's like returning home. Yeah. But dreams are just like the illusion of home, or like nightmares, even something crazier than that. One of my favorite things about this, Brooks, is that it takes the hero's journey. It is that typical quest. It inverts it a little bit. Instead of the hero going into the underworld, coming back with gifts, he is already in the underworld, if you will, the dream world, the dreaming, right? And gets pulled into the real world and has to go through his quest. And it's kind of like an inverted version of that. I absolutely love that idea about it. What do you think about that?
It's also kind of meta in a way. Kind of how Dream is the prince of stories. He's not supposed to be part of the stories. He's like, he's supposed to be kind of, I guess, the maintaining stories and dreams. And it's kind of interesting to see, this guy as a character, because when he does something, it does affect the story, and it affects the people in the story.
Yeah.
And I think the first one is like more Dream's story than probably any of them, because it's just him on his own, basically having to do for himself.
Other parts of the series, like Dream's not even in some of the issues.
He's
a side character.
He's almost a background,
Absolutely. Let's talk about that artwork. First of all, you got Sam Keith coming in. Sam Keith did the first 4 or 5 issues, something like that. In the middle of the third one, he told him, I'm just going to dip out. Basically, he said he felt like Jimi Hendrix in the Beatles, right? He felt like they were doing a great thing, but he wanted to do his own great thing. Of course, he left and went off to do the Max. Of course, his inker, Mike Dringenberg, came on as the new ongoing penciler, with Malcolm Jones III coming on as inking. So there is a big shift in the artwork, right? But I think both of them stand on their own feet. And of course, if you take the entirety of the Sandman into consideration, there are so many different artists that get used. It's not atypical that Keith only did the first couple issues, though it does kind of. I love his Dr. Destiny, but Mike's Dr. Destiny is just as scary to me, but in a different way. What do you think about the art overall? I know you're a big Sam Keith fan.
I like Sam Keith. He has a very unique style, I think. The way he can make, his characters very cartoony looking, with exaggerated features, but he can also make a semi-realistic looking person.
Yeah.
And I think that works really well for this, because, kind kind of the crazy nature of the characters.
Yeah, and you can feel him like working his way into his style. You know, like the Max is a Sam Keith on a different level than from Sandman. So this Sandman's not even Sam Keith's best work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it's amazing work, and it's really good, and I love his Dr. Destiny. It's in my. He looks like a real-life Mr. Potato Head, doesn't he?
He looks kind of like a brown Skeletor.
Yes, in a way. Basically, if you took a real potato that had been sitting out on your counter for like 2 weeks, and you like put some weird like teeth on them or something, and
make
some
your
eyes,
own Dr. Destiny.
Make your own. Of course, it's very horror-driven, but one of the reasons why I think that is so is to show the importance of dreams. And what are dreams if not defined by the nightmares? What is the light if not defined by the darkness? What is the sun if not defined by the shadows, right, that it projects? What is life without the boundary that death projects? What do you think about that? Think about the relationship, for instance, between him and death. Why is sleep and death the closest siblings of the endless? And I know we haven't gotten to them yet in this book, but we're going to get to despair, desire, delirium, destruction, destiny. What is the difference? Why are those two so closely connected? I think it's because without the light, you don't have the dark, and it works. And that's why Dream is a dichotomous state himself, being the Lord of Nightmare and the King of Dreams.
Well, we're not afraid of dreams because we know we'll wake up. When we die, we have no idea, you know. It's like the whole thing behind our fear of death is we don't know. We don't really know what happens. Like, we have ideas, but, you know, ideas aren't facts.
I guess the idea is that death is just
where's a dream, like, even a bad dream, like, you know, eventually you wake up from it.
Okay. What about the dichotomy of dreams themselves, though? Like, you do have dreams, but you have nightmares.
Yeah.
So some people that are plagued by numerous nightmares, say, for instance, they're scared to go to sleep. Think about, like, Nightmare on Elm Street, for instance, right? But then people that have lovely dreams, or can even lucid dreams in non-threatening ways, like, they enjoy their dreaming experience, and it's almost like an extended stream of consciousness for them in a way. But what I think is important is that the reason why this book is so horror infused, right? And maybe the rest of it gets very fantastical, very crazy, very very out there and metaphysical and all this kind of stuff, and it doesn't get this horrific again, really. You know, not for an extended amount of time. But of course, Neil Gaiman learning what he's doing.
Yeah.
But I think it's also the shadows giving shape to the light. You know what I'm saying?
Even like, you know, Morpheus, like really, if you look at him, he's always black and white.
Yeah.
With like the, you know, he's got the eyes that usually, sometimes they're blue.
Yeah, that means something, right?
Yeah.
You know, maybe it does.
And he always wears black and gray. You don't see him like, you know, wearing any colors.
Now, of course, that's probably because Neil Gaiman basically dresses like that. But yeah, it's like the stark black and white. There's no gray. He's both. It's the duality. It's that polarity between the two. And I think that's something that really Neil Gaiman and company really strive to show in this opening world-building volume of the Sandman. I think they do it amazingly. I also think the big idea in the story is to get over yourself. You know, like Sandman, Morpheus, he goes through this crazy ordeal. He goes into hell powerless, comes back with his power. Destiny, he doesn't even really defeat Dr. Destiny. He doesn't accidentally. He crushes the Dreamstone thinking that it's going to kill Dream, but it just returns his power. He's like, I'm more powerful than I've ever been. It's such a victory. And then what does he do in the next issue? He's moping and complaining to his sister Death, who, by the way, is working. Have you ever had someone come up to you while you're working to complain and moan about their life? Well, you're like, I'm working right now. Yeah. That's what Dream is doing to Death in that last issue. You know what I'm saying? Get over yourself, right? And the use and purpose of power. All kinds of power in this. Dream's power, Death's power. Of course, Roderick was initially trying to get Death. And I love that moment when Dream says, you better be thankful you didn't get Death. Because look what having Dream captured did.
And I also love it, like, in that last issue, he tells her, like, they were trying to get you, and she's like, oh, yeah, I know.
Yeah, I know.
It's just like, it didn't matter.
You didn't think I'd care about you? I love their relationship. It works so well. She has the right balance and purpose of her power. She reminds Dream at the end of this book, we have a responsibility to existence, to reality. Dream's like, you're right. I've been so selfish and self-centered. Not that this fixes everything, of course, as we shall find out.
Still going to be a massive prick.
Still going to be a massive Massive prick. But you look at the power, Dr. John D., Dr. Destiny, Roderick and his son, people, John Constantine and the woman, people, hell, people seeking power and uses of it that are not in the natural order, right?
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that this book is about the natural order of power, right? Yeah. I don't know.
It was like when you think about everybody who had one of his relics and like meets a horrible end, like, you know, the girl, she dies. The demon gets like carried away and like tortured some more, and Dr. Destiny goes back to Arkham.
Yeah, just like Scarecrow always said he would. Lots of like Martian Manhunter, some of those characters, Mr. Miracle. You know, there's that whole stuff that may stick out like a sore thumb. Nowadays,
I like that though. That, you know,
I do like it because Dream is a part of the DC
especially
universe.
Like Mr. Miracle's dream, like that he starts.
And they draw it like a Kirby style. Yeah, I absolutely love that. This book is very important. It helps cement the idea of the graphic novel, of the collection, of it's like a work of art. It's a piece of literature. It's one of the first things taught in schools as literature as far as comic books are concerned, and Watchmen, of course. It won many awards, over 26 Eisner. It was nominated for a Hugo Award. I think it won one for Overture. And, of course, issue 19 of the series won the World Fantasy Award for Best Short Fiction. Highly acclaimed. It also set up Neil Gaiman's career. He's a novelist. He has been working in television now. We got the Good Omens book, of course, he did with Terry Pratchett. Now we got the TV show. American Gods was him. Neverwhere is him. Neil Gaiman's very prolific at what he does. Maybe prolific's not the right word, but what he does. Because there's very little work comparatively to other people who've had a career as long as Neil Gaiman has. But Sandman set it up so that Neil Gaiman could pretty much do what he wanted to do. And if you like Sandman, check out some of his other work. But I think, personally, out of all of his work, and I love Neverwhere, I love American Gods, I love Good Omens, I love the TV show for Good Omens. Sandman's the best for me.
Yeah, probably.
And Sandman's amazing. It's such a fantastical, imaginative world, and it's a comic book that is so innovative. Even with Robbie Bush's coloring, and Todd Klein, one of the absolute best letterers that have ever lived. At the time Sandman came out, you didn't have different like word balloons for different people, you know, and different things. And dreams are like inverted, you know. You got the white text on the black word balloon, and it's weird, and weird is different, you know, and it's different for his different personifications. This book's amazing to me. Overall, I think it's one of the best comic books ever written.
Yeah,
and I think
I don't think anybody would really
right.
Say otherwise.
Brooks, it's easy for us to say Sandman is the best comic book, one of the best comic books ever written. But when you revisit it, like we just did, that's when you truly are in the moment relearning. This literally is one of the best comic books ever made. Like, when you read this, each page, each panel, each chapter, each volume, the entirety of the story, even with the added bits like Overture, which is the prelude, which shows why Dream's in a weakened state before he gets captured. The Endless Nights, whatever, that one shot they did with all the different bits, and the Dream Hunters. This world is so big, and of course it got elaborated on by people like Mike Carey and the Lucifer book and other writers. There's so many characters, so much idea, so much story in the Sandman. I absolutely love it. Final thoughts on the Sandman, Brooks. Why should people read it if they've made it through this video having not read it?
Well, it's a classic. It's a good example of, like, you know, comics not just for kids, you know. Comics can be more than superheroes.
Yeah.
You know, comics don't have to be, like, you know, just one thing. Like, you know, they can be very thought-provoking, you know, and, you know, grown up and present, like, different ideas, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And tell, like, you know, stories, like, you know, good stories. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what Sandman's all about. Great stories. We'll be doing more Sandman coming up later on in Season 2 of Comics Revisited and beyond, so stay tuned and get ready. But next week, join me and Brian as we talk about The Nightly News. That's right, Jonathan Hickman, one of his very first creator-owned books over at Image. If you've been liking what Hickman's been doing on House of X and Powers of 10, I know you have been.
Yeah.
Definitely check out some of his earlier work, like The Nightly News. Have you ever read The Nightly News?
I have not.
You need to read it and then watch our video about it. Anyway, we'll be talking about The Nightly News by Jonathan Hickman next week. Let us know your recollections, though, of the Sandman. And then, once again, links down below in case you want to check it out and help support the channel. But let us know what you think about the comic book, your recollections on your revisits and your reviews in the comments down below. Let's keep the conversation going. Thank you so much for checking out the video. Please do like, share, and subscribe. And join us over at popculturephilosophers.com for popcasts? Podcasts and a whole lot more.
Popcast, you should call it that.
We should. I should hashtag Popcast. We've been the Pop Culture Philosophers. I am Rockin' Robbie Billups. This is
Brooks
the Magnificent. And thanks for rocking with us, Kramer. Do you remember that episode of Seinfeld where Kramer was trying to do that, like, sleep pattern that he learned? And he was like, I'm going to sleep 15 minutes for, like, every 4 hours.
And, like, he passed out when he was having sex with that girl, and, like, the mafia tosses him into the river.
The East River or whatever? Yes. He wakes up and he's just in the body bag. That's why we said Kramer.